someone is caring, it is most often not in the church. And part of the focus of Insight for Living, cultivating a special needs ministry, and ministering to those who struggle. And a disability isn't just, I'm in a wheelchair, or I'm on a crutch, or, you know, I shuffle. Because 90% of people who are disabled appear normal. I mean, look at me.
I do.
I have a problem.
Right.
And
Well,
so when people say things, they don't realize they're throwing a spear, piercing the heart that's already so shattered. And so I want to say, it's okay to say nothing. And to say, I can't imagine. In fact, I have 2 blogs written for this very thing. Here's what to say. Here's what not to say. And then I'm offering pastors books and resources, short little ones. Like this one is so awesome that Insight did. It's so awesome, I can't find it. But one like this, Encouragement for Life. If a pastor doesn't know what to say, and they're short statements.
Right.
I've highlighted a ton of things that we have. People think disability, well, where's your curriculum on, how to function with a wheelchair, or where can I get this? I don't do that well. Johnny and Friends is an organization. Key Ministry is an organization with tools like that. I want to encourage and inspire the soul. So this little book may have a little half page of something right here on Do Not Fear. Or Fix Your Eyes on the Lord. Well, sometimes that's hard for me to do. So when I hear someone at church say, well, you just, how's your prayer life? I want to go, well, I first sometimes want to hit them, but we won't talk about that. But I want to say, I can't explain to you how much I'm praying. But I'm so anxious. So why don't you just say, I can't imagine. I came across this, and I wanted to encourage you.
I think to acknowledge the mystery of God's will is a very important thing. Our God is a profound, unfathomable Heavenly Father. He's not a dear old man with a beard, just a little older than our great-grandfather. That's not God. He lives in a realm beyond our grasp. He has a will beyond our knowledge. He has a plan beyond our understanding and awareness. We need to leave it at that. That's called respecting God. When we do that, we respect others in the midst of that mystery. Because we can't explain it, only proves that we're finite. Doesn't mean they're wrong or living out of the will of God. They may be in the nucleus of His will. And as a lady wrote me recently who lost her 54-year-old husband to cancer. And she says, when I shower, I look into the closet and I still see his clothes. And I can't quite bring myself to take them out, but I need to, because the smell of the cologne he uses is all over them. Smell is one of the most nostalgic of all things. And she talks about the grief of this, and I said to her, let the grief flow. Because she wanted to know what's wrong with me. It's been 4 months. I said, honestly, you're doing really well. Let the grief, you never get over grief until you've expressed it fully. Some can express it fully in 4 months. Some over 5 years.
And some for a lifetime.
Well, I think that goes back to what you were saying about the timelines that people think that you ought to have for grieving that you have a child with special needs. And we talk about this a lot because I think it's sort of a misunderstood emotion. I remember when Annie was ill and in the ICU, I said to my sister, who's a nurse, I feel like I'm grieving and she's not even dead. And I felt so guilty for feeling that way. And she said, this is a loss.
Yeah.
This is the loss of having a healthy child.
Yeah.
You've experienced that as you've raised John, and it's a common emotion to so many parents who are raising kids with disabilities. And I think just knowing that they don't have to have it on any particular timeline is really important.
I'd like to bring up a subject that we haven't talked about, and that's the effect of a special needs child on the other members of the family, siblings. We have Ashley, who is the oldest in the family. We have the middle child in Austin, and Colleen is in a blended family, so we have 2 others. And so they've got 5 children. So your challenges are many.
Well, there's grief. You know, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross has the 5 stages of grief.
Right.
And a lot of people follow that model. I happen not to, because I'll never be out of one of those stages. I mean, and Ashley and Austin, you know, they have grief that their brother can be very weird in the grocery store. And so, you know, on humorous moments, I'll be like, I know, guys, just, you can walk on the other side of the road. You know, I don't force them to be a certain way. They didn't ask for this. And so there is no end to grief. Norm Wright has phenomenal. Oh, I just ran into him the other day.
He's wonderful.
He's incredible.
Yeah,
he had a very, very severely disabled son who died at 26. And he was in an institution because he was so filled with disabilities. And he has written so much on grief and recovery and the way that men process it and the way that women process it. And one of the best books I have is, and I can't even remember the name of it. Where is it over there?
By Norm Wright?
Yeah, it's Experiencing Grief. And he talks about it just being like this. And you're going to feel lost. And you feel out of control. And sometimes I've left grocery carts in the middle of the store. Because I've just become so overwhelmed.
I've done that.
Because I see a normal family. And I think,
do you,
I've lost that.
Do you carve time just to be with the other children? Yeah, you would have to.
It's hard.
I know. I've not used the word easy yet in this whole talk.
Right, but I remember when, because I've wanted to be a perfect parent, which is such an illusion.
There's only one of those, and he's in heaven.
I know. And I can't wait to be
And
there.
I can't figure him out.
But I do like it that he says, do as I say. You know.
Yeah.
Because sometimes with my kids, I'm like, this is bottom line.
Yep.
Anyways, with Jonathan, he was in the hospital a lot early on. And so I thought, well, then how am I going to be with the other kids? 11 days one time. And so I brought their favorite things, and we each had to spend the night. So one night, Ashley spent the night, and we had someone to give me little bath beads. We had green jelly bean baths. So I did whatever she wanted to do.
Sure.
And while Jonathan was in his room, now that's hard on the inside, but the focus is the soul and character of my daughter, who never expected to be in a hospital with a brother, and who misses certain things, and can't explain this to her friends. So I would do that. I don't know if you read this one, but my recent blog is called Plain Hooky. And I didn't tell them about Lucy teaching you to smoke. That was probably one of your hooky days, wasn't it? But I would take...
It's another story.
Right.
That, you know,
See, we have a problem.
Right.
But I've taken them out of school.
We need someone to work with Lucy. Are you available to
Yeah,
do
she's... No!
Okay, no, I'm not.
Because she would teach me to smoke.
Well, what is she, 120 now? I mean,
Well,
when you get a certain age...
You're a
you just
year and
can't
a
deal
half
with it.
after, so let's not talk about age. According to my life, I've aged in dog years. I'm 495. And these are not lines.
And your
Wrinkles age, they're loose
and your
lines.
fur's getting a little longer too.
I know. Check my little things here.
Will you get back to the subject, please?
I don't remember what it was.
Well,
No.
you were on Ashley, and then you
Yeah,
were
and
going
then
to
with
get on Austin.
And we lived in California, and so I would take one of them out of school, and we'd go to Disneyland because we had Disneyland passes. Jonathan hates Disneyland.
I'm sure.
Now that's interesting. See, you would understand that, but the noise
Oh my gosh, it's loud, and there's movement,
in a
and there's
restaurant,
colors, and it smells.
he's like,
and,
you're all enjoying a restaurant, a hamburger place, or whatever. And when are we going to go, Mom?
Much.
As soon as he gets to the car, he's fine.
yeah.
And we don't even hear the noise because we're at the table. That's all he can.
And because I can't hear him when I want you.
Well, that's your
Because that's another problem.
right.
Yeah.
That's another issue.
Which has helped me understand hearing issues with
Right.
John. But the bottom line is, they still want to go to Disneyland.
Right.
And he hates it. So I would take one out of school, and we'd go to Disneyland,
Nice.
and we'd eat whatever we wanted to eat, and do whatever we wanted to do.
Mm.
So I tried, but
Could you really get free from the care of Jonathan while you're there?
If he was in school.
Okay.
And again, it's so hard, and you have to determine to make this
Release him and let him be there.
Yeah, like things will come up. We were going on the cruise a couple years ago.
Right.
I had 3 backups. So I thought, okay, John will not enjoy this trip. Everybody else in the family, Tova and I had just gotten married, so we have 4 of the 5 kids.
Right.
I'm losing count. And all 3 backups at the very last minute fell through.
Oh, no.
I mean,
I
that
remember
morning,
that. Oh, it's maddening.
one lady fell and had to go to the hospital. My sister, who was the backup, she ended up in the hospital.
Oh.
And then another backup ended up having such severe migraines. So I'm leaving on
Here
this
you
trip
are.
at the airport trying to figure out who's going to help John. And that's when I would turn to a book like this. Okay, God's ways are higher than my way. Lord, I have to trust you. But I don't know what's going to happen. And it ended up being a great week for him. But it's hard.
Yeah.
And that's why you have to, I always talk to your mom about this. It's a renewing of the mind.
You are such a good student of your daughter.
That could be a problem.
And we know that so many disabilities are sort of on the rise in terms of diagnosis. And this is going to affect all of our churches. So what would your advice be to seminaries and other training institutes for pastors in terms of understanding disabilities? What would your vision be for that?
Well, let me just speak to children in general, and then I'll specifically address disabilities. I think pastors need to guard against making their reputation hang on the actions of their children. This can be very manipulative. You know, your father's a pastor here, and you therefore need to be really a good model.
And I didn't hear that. I did not hear
We would never have said that.
That really wouldn't have gone over well.
Well, we wouldn't have said that because that's twisting. She never asked to be a pastor's child.
Right.
I chose to be. My family comes with me. And I remember they're telling me when they were in a particular Christian school that they would answer a test and the teacher would say, "That's your answer?" And it'd be wrong. And she said, "Yes, ma'am, it is." "You're Chuck Swindoll's daughter and you don't know the answer to that?" Right? And I want to go down to the teacher and say, "Get a life. She's a child. She's more than just my daughter. She's trying to learn too. She's embarrassed already not knowing. Don't manipulate that." So I would say to parents as well as teachers, go easy. I often say pastors' kids turn out like they do because they hang around all the deacons' kids. You know? And who knows why deacons' kids hang like that.
Because they hang around Lucy.
Right, that's true. Now with disabilities, as a pastor, it's very important that you, first of all, have a heart. You cannot pastor a church just with a mind, or just because you can preach, or just because you can lead a group or build a new building. You got to have a heart. Without a heart, you ought to be in something else. Go do something else. Leave the pastorate if you have no heart. Now, if you have a heart, then you're halfway there. That means you take notice of those who need special care. There's a man in our church who has lost his wife in the last 9 months, 8-9 months. I greet him differently than I do one that is just married a week ago or 2 months ago. They've got another life. His isn't all cherries and whipped cream. He's still getting over it. Then I've got a couple whose son took his life. That's another kind of grief. And the cycle comes around, and on that Sunday, they may not even be there. My heart goes out to them. I never think, why aren't they here? They're always here. I think, you know what? just like you put it when the man walking across the street. There's got to be a reason. I find out later it's the cycle. And I put my arms around both of them and I tell them, I can't imagine going through that, having never lost one of my living children, one of my adult children, especially like this. So when I find disabilities, I think we've got to have a ministry to disability children. One of the first things we did at Stonebriar is open our arms to disabilities. Colleen helped us put that together.
Because of John. I didn't have any place
Isn't
to
that
live.
fabulous? Well, we have people who come saying, you're the first church that has wanted us. Then they'll name a church. I ask them not to name them, but they usually do. They'll say, when we were there, they said, we really have no place for your child. In other words, please leave. Go somewhere else.
And it could have taken them 2 hours to get there. I mean, it's just so...
And we have others who will drive 45 minutes, not to hear me preach, but because we've got a fabulous special needs ministry. We took up a special offering, took up $90,000+ to buy playground equipment just for special needs children. And our congregation just applauded it. They were thrilled. We asked for $45,000. They gave over twice that amount. And we got the finest in equipment. And we're not a rich church. We just happened to hit a button in everybody's life. And by doing that, it said to people, children with disabilities are valuable. If you check the Holocaust, they got rid of them. We don't need them around. I'll never forget those stories, ever. We need them around. I want to see a playground full of them. And some of them are 18 and 20 years old.
I know.
On the playground. And I think, how good is that? And they're cared for. It takes a lot more volunteers to do that. Special kind of volunteer. So I really make that appeal with passion. You don't really realize what you're missing if you haven't really come close and ministered to those. And I don't know how many times they've come back and said, what was I thinking? I was kind of afraid.
Of course.
You know, they don't know what to do. And
Of
so I said, we'll teach you. We got great teachers and they'll show you. We just don't drop them in the room and say, well, do your best. We
Good
say,
luck.
here's the way that you can handle this. And so we have naturally a leader of the whole group who she's fabulous. And she probably learned from Colleen how to do it. And it's like, this church cares. So I think that's a very important part of what we're sharing today.
Anything to add to that, Colleen?
Yeah, I do. I think that Henri Nouwen comes to mind because he was such a scholar. I mean, teaching at Yale and Cambridge.
Harvard.
And Harvard, and then spent 20 years at a mental health facility.
L'Arche in Canada.
Well, that was after he did all of these academic works.
Yes, it was.
And he spent the majority of his life teaching. And he said, when I went to L'Arche, it's a Canadian, they have them in several places, but it's in Canada. And I want to have one here someday. He said, I learned my head knowledge meant nothing. And so it's the trip from here down to here.
Stay right there. The book is called In the Name of Jesus. And as he writes the book, he says, when I went to the school, not one was impressed with my degrees. Here were these, and one of them just followed him, just adored him. He couldn't have cared less if Henri Nouwen had not gotten out of 3rd grade. He was not impressed that he had taught students at Harvard or that he was known all over the world as a speaker. He just knew this man lived with him, and he would take trips and he would say, when are you going to come back? And one time he said, can I go with you? And Henri said, yes.
Good.
So he traveled with him. Have you read this part of the story?
Oh, yeah.
And so he
I read
stands up,
almost every one of his books.
He stands up to give his speech and he said, we'll call him John. I have John with me today. John, are there some things you want to... Yes, there are. And he stood up and he walked up. He said, I had no idea what he was going to say. And he said, I know this man. Some of these things are true. Everybody laughed. And he said, but I'm going home with him because he's my friend.
Oh.
And he sat down, and the place did a standing ovation. No, Henri Nouwen says they forgot what I said.
And that's really what we want, isn't it?
Of
Yeah,
course,
but I
it
would
is.
learn so much. I mean, there is so much to digest that, the disability subject can kind of be like that one, how do we deal with this?
Right.
Well, actually, I would love to see a school that required pastors in their curriculum to have no academic part in the class, but to keep a journal and to say, there are 3 assignments. Today, I'm going to ask you to do these things, either work in a home with Alzheimer's patients, or to work in a home with children and invisible disabilities, or to be and sit with a therapist, or to go and observe a family, or to stay in a wheelchair for a week.
I did that at an airport. I was waiting for a long-awaited flight with friends, and I said, I'm going to sit on this wheelchair, and let's see what happens. I wasn't mocking it at all. I just rolled the wheelchair over, and I sat there. People walked by. Most of them patted me on the head like I was 3.
Did you almost want to go?
Yeah. Many of them looked around me, didn't look at me.
Right.
Very few stopped to say, hi, how are you? To talk. I always talk to people in wheelchairs. I pick out the wheelchairs at our church. And if I can make it to every one of them, they're the ones I want to greet and visit. Had a former church where the wife was coming in. She was pushing her husband, who's a physicist, in a wheelchair. Had to be paralyzed from the waist down. And when she got to the door, the usher said, would he like a bulletin?
Oh.
And she said, why don't you ask him? He said, yes, I would like one. I'm here also to worship. Oh, okay. And when I heard that, I thought, oh man, we haven't trained our ushers right. We need to train them to know how to greet whoever.
So it's really not just about training folks who are volunteering in special needs.
Oh, no.
ministry.
No.
The church needs to know we're family.
Everyone.
We're a
Well,
body.
Yeah, and
Right.
to
Very good point.
like in a curriculum, have the students write what they think of this assignment.
The pastoral students.
Yes, that's correct. Like in a seminary. And I would say probably, if they were honest enough to write it, it would be an assignment they would think, oh, are you kidding me? Okay, so then midway through, let's have you write another journal. And they may still be hating it. They may still be whatever. But for pastoral work, because it's in the soul that they're committing their life to teaching. What happens in your soul as you wash the feet of someone who's paralyzed, as you change the adult diaper, as you sit with the family whose father can't remember the grandchild's name? That happens every day. So then at the end of the school semester, write, what is your perspective now? Because as with Nouwen, the most impactful books he's ever written are after he worked at L'Arche. I've never read an academic work by him. I probably couldn't, because being probably 5 different languages.
Well, he's written very few because it's mainly devotional. I was at a great seminary, 4 years, Master of Theology course. Not one time did I hear the word disability. It was a great school. Godly teachers. 2 words I didn't hear. One was finances. The other one was disabilities. Both of which are huge when you're in a church.
Right.
I didn't know how to balance a budget. I didn't know how to talk to trustees. I didn't know how to plan for the financial year. I'm like, I'm scrambling. And I got men around me that knew, and they looked at me like, where was your training? Well, it was in theology. It was in the languages. It was in Bible exposition. It was certainly Christian education. But we never dealt with disabilities.
I know. Which is amazing, because another fact that I'm going to pull out of my hat is that if you put all the disabilities together, all of them, including physical, emotional, mental, 1 in 2 people struggle with a disability of some kind. That means if I'm sitting right here in church, either you or you
Every other one.
have a disability. So I want pastors and church leaders to understand you're speaking to someone in grief. You're speaking to someone
Who's struggling.
who is struggling.
Yeah, right. And, or their friends, or their family working with them. I mean, we haven't even mentioned Alzheimer's, though you hinted at it a while ago. The grandfather doesn't remember their names.
It's biggest disability, as you know. Biggest category.
Huge. Just this past week, dealt with a woman whose mother, not that old a woman, early 60s, is just fading fast. And this daughter, who is a sweet lady, said, she doesn't know any of us. And we can't let her out because she, you know how my dad lived with us and would take walks, and his walks were all in one direction. He didn't know where home was. We more than once got in our cars to find him. He happened to have a stroke and a heart attack the same day when I was preaching. And from then on, as he lived with us, we watched him fade. And that gave our children the first chance to be around that. And he died several years later. But you never think it's going to happen to my folks. You know, the doctors always say when they deal with people, they never thought they would be the one that has the stroke, or they would be the one that has a parent that gets a disability. But you're right about
the
propensity of disability.
The caregivers are a whole nother.
That's another subject.
Yeah, and really because another thing I would mention about the seminary too, ADD just kicked in, so I'm going to jump back.
Go back.
But Christ didn't have a special room when he ministered to people. And he didn't have like a curriculum. And he didn't have a special time to be with people. And a special place. And money. He had himself. So in training pastors or church leaders or communities or anybody, it's not about how much you have to have. It's who you are and what you bring.
You know what dawned on me recently? He never asked his disciples to write something down. They were all literate. They'd all been to synagogue schools. Now, write this down. It's going to be on the test at the end of the week.
Right.
Never did that. He did send them out to preach by twos, never alone. And he got them back. He said, okay, let's get away and let's debrief. Let's go through that. But they saw him minister. And a woman comes with a hemorrhage, and they saw him deal with her. Here's a man with a withered hand. They saw him deal. Here's a man with demons. They witnessed the casting out of demons.
Right.
The education was hands-on. And even they forsook him and fled when he was crucified. So it doesn't mean being around it. You learn it.
The soul work goes back to the spiritual development part. I have learned, it's been revealed. See, the disability isn't the problem. The problem is, it's what one accepts or doesn't accept. So really, it's a me problem.
That's a great place to end, I think.
I'm not done yet. You gotta wait a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, it has revealed my impatience. It has revealed my self-centeredness. It has revealed my intolerance. It has revealed my lack of faithfulness. I mean, so when we're talking about training and serving, it's being with someone, and then I think often, Lord, how are you so patient with me? I'd want to flick me off the place so fast, but you are so all patient. And that makes me want to be with him. So now go. Do you remember what you were going to say?
No, I wasn't going to say anything. I just thought your ending was great there. That's it. Anywhere along here would be a good spot.
Well, we are so thankful to have the opportunity to talk with you both.
Have we covered what you wanted to?
Absolutely. And we want to thank you for tuning in today. We hope that if you are a parent of a child with a disability, that this has affirmed you and encouraged you. If you're a pastor or a volunteer at a church, we hope that it's inspired you to start something new and to reach out to families affected by disabilities. Again, I'm Katie Wetherbee with Key Ministry. Thank you so much for joining us.